The air still hummed with the phantom echoes of chaos. A thick, metallic scent, a morbid cocktail of ozone and something far more organic, clung stubbornly to the grand, but now fractured, halls of the Eldoria Citadel. Sunlight, usually a vibrant, life-affirming cascade through the soaring arched windows, now pierced the gloom in fractured, accusing shards, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the silent aftermath of the previous day's unimaginable events. The destruction from the convergence of the ethereal rifts had been absolute, not just in its physical manifestation, gaping fissures scarring ancient stone, crystalline structures shattered into glittering dust, but in its profound psychological impact. The collective memory of the horrific energy surge, the screams that had torn through the air, and the inexplicable disappearances, still vibrated within the very foundations of the city, a ghostly resonance that threatened to drive the survivors to the brink of despair. Elara, her usually luminous silver eyes now clouded with an exhaustion that seemed to weigh down her very soul, stood amidst the ruins of the Grand Archives. Her fingers, trembling slightly, traced the charred edges of what was once a priceless tome of ancient prophecies. The silence around her was not peaceful, it was a heavy, suffocating blanket, punctuated only by the occasional creak of settling stone or the distant, mournful cries of lost citizens. Each sound was a painful reminder of what had been lost. Her once immaculate ceremonial robes were torn and smudged with soot, a testament to her tireless efforts in the immediate aftermath, tending to the wounded, organizing the search parties for the missing. But now, even her formidable will seemed to waver. The weight of leadership, of an entire civilization looking to her for answers she did not possess, was crushing. Beside her, Kalen, his face a mask of grim determination, continued his meticulous examination of a peculiar scorch mark on the floor. Unlike the other mundane signs of destruction, this mark pulsed with a faint, residual energy signature and anomaly. His usually agile movements were stiff, burdened by the physical and emotional toll of battling the ethereal entities that had spilled forth from the rifts. He still clutched the hilt of his enchanted blade, Soulfire, a subconscious gesture, as if expecting another attack at any moment. The blade, usually vibrant with a soft, inner glow, now seemed dull, its magic sapped by the sheer expenditure of energy. The unsettling silence was almost worse than the battle itself. During the fight, there was a clear enemy, a clear purpose. Now, there was only the vast, echoing emptiness, a void filled with unanswered questions and the unsettling certainty that the danger, though temporarily quelled, was far from over. The Oracle's sphere, a relic of immense power that had been the focal point of the previous day's cataclysmic event, lay inert and shattered in the center of the archives. Its once iridescent surface, capable of shimmering with visions of past, present, and future, was now a dull, broken shell, its inner light extinguished. Shards of its crystalline casing glinted ominously in the weak light, like the broken pieces of a forgotten dream. This was the most chilling sight of all. The sphere was meant to be unbreakable, a beacon of stability. Its destruction spoke volumes of the unprecedented forces unleashed, and the profound, perhaps irreversible, damage done to the very fabric of their reality. Its silence was a stark declaration that the connection to the ancient prophecies, to the guiding hand of fate, had been severed. Deep beneath the citadel, in the secure, almost forgotten vaults, Professor Aris, his white hair disheveled and his usually sharp mind a whirlwind of frantic calculations, hunched over his makeshift workstation. Holographic projections flickered around him, displaying complex energy readings and chaotic temporal distortions. His eyes, normally sparkling with the thrill of discovery, were wide with a desperate fear. He muttered to himself, theories colliding and collapsing in his agitated mind. The temporal displacement. The quantum entanglement. It shouldn't be possible. Not on this scale. His experiments, initially designed to stabilize the ethereal rifts, had instead, in a cruel twist of fate, amplified them, turning a minor anomaly into an existential threat. The guilt was a heavy, suffocating cloak, chilling him to the bone. He felt the weight of every lost soul, every fractured stone, every tear shed, pressing down on him, a monument to his catastrophic miscalculation. Meanwhile, in the makeshift infirmary, nestled within the less damaged northern wing of the citadel, Lyra moved with a quiet, practiced efficiency. Her small hands, usually adorned with intricate runic patterns during her healing rituals, were now stained with the sweat and blood of the wounded. She administered elixirs, chanted ancient soothing spells, and offered words of comfort to those who lay groaning on the cots. Her face, though pale and drawn, held an unwavering resolve, a stark contrast to the despair that threatened to engulf the others. She had witnessed unimaginable suffering, had seen lives flicker out despite her best efforts. Yet, she refused to break. Her healing magic, though strained, continued to flow, a testament to her deep well of empathy and her unyielding belief in the sanctity of life. But even she could not ignore the vacant stares of some of the injured, their minds fractured by what they had witnessed, their souls seemingly ripped from their bodies. The physical wounds were treatable, the invisible scars on their spirits were far more concerning. The city of Eldoria, once a beacon of advanced civilization and arcane beauty, now resembled a wounded beast, licking its profound wounds in the oppressive silence. A tangible sense of foreboding hung in the air, a premonition of darker things yet to come. The initial shock was giving way to a chilling realization. This wasn't just a battle, it was the beginning of a new, terrifying chapter. The silence, initially born of shock, was slowly transforming into a collective gasp of hell breath, as if everyone instinctively knew that the calm was merely the prelude to a far greater storm. The air itself felt heavier, charged with unspoken anxieties, the collective fear of what horrors the broken reality might yet unleash. The very foundations of their world, once thought immutable, now seemed perilously fragile, teetering on the precipice of an unknown abyss. This was not merely the end of a battle, it was the dawn of an existential crisis, a chilling descent into the unknown. As the last embers of the previous day's disaster faded into a haunting twilight, an insidious shadow began to unfurl itself from the hidden corners of Eldoria. Within the dimly lit, opulent chambers of the High Council, Elder Forlock, his ancient eyes glinting with a calculating ambition, began to sow the seeds of dissent. He moved with a serpentine grace, his voice a low, persuasive murmur that found fertile ground in the panicked hearts of the other, weaker council members. "The Oracle's sphere is shattered," he declared, his voice carrying just enough sorrow to be convincing. "Elara's leadership has led us to this precipice. Her pursuit of the ethereal secrets, her trust in Professor Aris's reckless endeavors. It has cost us dearly." He painted a vivid, yet distorted, picture of Elara's perceived failures, subtly twisting her proactive attempts to understand the rifts into a reckless disregard for safety. He invoked ancient laws, long dormant, regarding the stability of the realm and the failure of the crown to protect its people. His words, carefully chosen and laced with manipulative logic, began to chip away at the already fragile loyalty within the council. The memory of the terror, the grief for lost loved ones, the palpable fear of the unknown future, these were the potent ingredients Forlock expertly exploited. He proposed a vote of no confidence, a drastic measure, but one he argued was necessary to restore order and prevent further catastrophe. He spoke of decisive action, stronger leadership, and a return to tradition, buzzwords designed to appeal to the fear and uncertainty plaguing Eldoria. Unbeknownst to Elara, or indeed to Kaelin and Lyra who were engrossed in their immediate duties, a small, clandestine group of Eldorian citizens, disillusioned and desperate for answers, had begun to gather in the underbelly of the city. Led by a charismatic, yet enigmatic figure named Marius, they called themselves the Sons of the Shattered Sky. Marius, a former high-ranking guard disillusioned by what he perceived as the High Council's complacency, preyed on the fear and frustration of the populace. He spoke with fiery rhetoric, condemning the existing leadership for their perceived inaction and promising a swift, decisive path to recovery. His eyes, though outwardly charismatic, held a dangerous flicker of fanaticism, a barely concealed ambition that went beyond mere restoration. While our leaders bicker and mourn, Marius thundered to his assembled followers in a hidden cavern, his voice echoing with fierce conviction, "The true threat grows. The rifts are not just closed, they are ruptured. And what spills forth from such wounds? Not just energy, but entities. We must take matters into our own hands. We must be the shield Eldoria needs, even if our leaders are too blind to see it." His words resonated deeply with the desperate and the grieving, those who felt abandoned and unheard. He promised them answers, a sense of agency, and a chance to reclaim their shattered pride. He began to organize them into disciplined units, teaching them rudimentary combat techniques and instilling in them a fierce loyalty to his cause, a cause subtly yet effectively undermining Elar's legitimate authority. As Forlock's machinations unfolded in the gilded cages of the council chambers, and Marius's dangerous fervor ignited the hearts of the common folk, a far more ancient and sinister power stirred in the desolate, forgotten lands beyond Eldoria's protective magical barrier. Deep within the forbidding cinder wastes, where the earth was scorched and the skies perpetually bruised, a forgotten temple, long thought reduced to dust, pulsed with a malevolent, nascent energy. This was the lair of the Shadow Weaver, Malachor, a sorcerer of unimaginable power, banished centuries ago for his forbidden experiments with primordial void magic. Malachor, his gaunt figure draped in robes woven from shadow itself, his eyes glowing with an unholy amethyst light, stood before an altar pulsing with dark energies. The ritual he was performing was archaic, steeped in a forgotten language of dread. He was not merely observing the chaos that had engulfed Eldoria, he had orchestrated it. The ethereal rifts, which Elara and Aris had sought to understand, were merely conduits, carefully manipulated by Malachor to release something far more ancient and terrifying. His goal was not simply destruction, but a complete reordering of reality, a world plunged into eternal twilight, where his power would reign supreme. "The foolish mortals believe they have contained the chaos," Malachor hissed, his voice a dry, rasping whisper, yet imbued with an unsettling power that made the very air vibrate. They have only opened the door. The true harvest is yet to come. He stretched forth a skeletal hand, and a swirling vortex of shadowy energy coalesced above the altar. Within its depths, faint, ghastly forms began to materialize, nascent entities of pure void, hungry and malicious, waiting for their full manifestation. The destruction of the Oracle's sphere, the chaos in Eldoria, these were but a symphony to Malachor, a crescendo leading to his ultimate triumph. He had turned Eldoria's greatest strength, its pursuit of knowledge, into its most fatal vulnerability, and now, he was ready to claim his prize. The stage was set, not just for another battle, but for a war that threatened to consume not just Eldoria, but the very fabric of existence itself. Elara, overwhelmed by the immediate demands of crisis management and the subtle, chilling whispers of dissent reaching her ears, sought solace and guidance in the ruins of the Oracle's sphere. She knew it was futile, the sphere was shattered, its connection to the temporal currents severed. Yet, a desperate hope, a flickering ember in the darkness, urged her forward. She knelt amidst the glistening shards, her hands hovering over the largest fragment, which still held a faint, almost imperceptible warmth. As she closed her eyes, focusing her immense magical energy, a violent surge of chaotic ether coursed through her, jarring her senses. Instead of the clear, prophetic visions the sphere once offered, she was assailed by a maelstrom of fragmented images, a towering, skeletal figure cloaked in shadow, its eyes burning with malevolent amethyst light, a flash of ancient, intricate runes swirling with dark energy, the echoing laughter of someone she couldn't place, yet felt a profound sense of dread from, a vision of Kalen, his face contorted in agony, battling an unseen horror. Lyra, her healing light flickering, surrounded by a tide of encroaching darkness, and finally, a chilling glimpse of Eldoria, but not the city she knew. It was a desolate wasteland, consumed by shadows, its crystalline towers reduced to dust. The visions were agonizingly brief, disjointed, and terrifying, leaving her gasping for breath, clutching her head, as if her very mind had been fractured by the overwhelming assault. The experience was more disorienting than informative, a broken compass pointing in 1,000 directions simultaneously. She sensed a profound, malevolent presence behind the chaos, a puppet master pulling the strings, but the identity remained elusive, shrouded in the very darkness she glimpsed. The sheer power of the vision, despite its fragmentation, confirmed her deepest fears. The threat was far from over, and it was far more insidious than a mere uncontrolled ethereal rift. This was a calculated attack, a meticulously planned unraveling of their reality. The destruction of the sphere was not an accident, it was a deliberate blinding, severing Eldoria from its ancient guidance, leaving them adrift in a sea of uncertainty. Meanwhile, Kalen, driven by his unwavering loyalty to Elara and a warrior's instinct for survival, continued his relentless investigation into the anomalous scorch mark he had discovered. Unlike Elara, whose focus was on the broader magical currents, Kalen sought tangible evidence, physical traces of the lingering danger. He spent hours meticulously collecting samples, his keen eyes observing every minute detail. His advanced sensory magic, usually so precise, was struggling, constantly overwhelmed by residual chaotic energy that pulsed intermittently from the mark. It was as if the very air around it was singing a dissonant, corrupted melody. Suddenly, a faint, almost imperceptible vibration resonated through his fingers as he touched the cool dash. It wasn't just residual energy, it was a distinct, subtle hum, unlike anything he had encountered before. Drawing his enchanted blade, Soulfire, he activated its divining properties. The blade, instead of glowing with its usual protective aura, pulsed with an erratic, crimson light, flickering violently, pointing towards a section of the wall that seemed unremarkable. He pressed his palm against the stone, channeling his arcane energy, and felt a ripple beneath the surface. With a focused surge of power, a hidden compartment, disguised by centuries of dust and illusion, slid open with a soft hiss, revealing a small, intricately carved wooden box. Inside the box, nestled on a bed of faded velvet, lay an ancient, obsidian-like shard, pulsating faintly with a dark, resonant energy. It was small, no larger than his thumb, yet it exuded an aura of profound malevolence, a cold dread that seemed to seep into his very bones. As he cautiously reached for it, a surge of fragmented memories, not his own, flooded his mind, whispers of forbidden rituals, glimpses of shadowed figures performing dark magic, and a fleeting vision of the Oracle's sphere, whole and vibrant, but then shattering from within, not from an external force. This was not a remnant of the ethereal rifts, this was something far older, far more sinister, an echo of a forgotten darkness. The shard, imbued with a fragment of ancient, corruptive power, was a direct link to the true orchestrator of the chaos, a chilling revelation that sent a shiver down his spine. The realization hit him with the force of a physical blow. The ethereal rifts were a distraction, a smokescreen. The real threat had been meticulously planted, waiting for its moment to strike. The frantic energy within the Eldoria Citadel reached a fever pitch as Professor Aris, pale and trembling, burst into Elara's makeshift command center. His usually meticulous data slate, now clutched in a shaking hand, displayed a series of alarming readings. "Elara," he gasped, his voice thin with terror. "The temporal distortions. They're not stabilizing. They're accelerating. And worse. I've detected a stable energy signature within the primary rift zone, a signature that shouldn't exist. It's like a beacon, drawing something in, something ancient." His eyes darted around, betraying a fear that bordered on panic. "My calculations were wrong. The convergence. It wasn't random. It was guided." Elara, still reeling from her fragmented vision, felt a cold dread seep into her bones. Aris's words confirmed her deepest fears, adding a scientific explanation to her mystical premonitions. "A beacon?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. "What kind of beacon, Aris? And drawing what?" The implications were terrifying. If something was being intentionally drawn through the weakened fabric of reality, then their previous battle was merely a skirmish, a prelude to a far greater invasion. Aris, wiping a bead of sweat from his brow, struggled to articulate the incomprehensible. I don't know, Elara. This signature is unlike anything in our records. It's a blend of pure ethereal energy and something darker. It feels resonant with void magic. But void magic was banished centuries ago. It shouldn't exist in such a concentrated form." His theories, his entire understanding of reality, were crumbling around him. The stable, predictable laws of physics and magic he had dedicated his life to studying were being rewritten by an unknown, malevolent force. Just then, Kalen arrived, his face grim, the obsidian shard clutched tightly in his hand. "Elara," he began, his voice low and urgent, "I found this. It's not of Eldoria. It emanates pure malevolence, and when I touched it, I saw fragmented memories. Images of the sphere shattering from within, not from the rifts. It's a dark ritual, centuries old, and I believe it's connected to what Aris is detecting." He held out the shard, its faint, dark pulse seemingly drawing the very light from the room. Elara's eyes widened as she recognized the chilling resemblance to the dark runes she had glimpsed in her own vision. The pieces began to click into place, forming a terrifying mosaic of calculated destruction. Void magic. A guided convergence. The sphere shattered from within. "It's Malachor," she breathed, the name of forgotten nightmare resurrected. The Shadow Weaver. He didn't just escape his banishment, he orchestrated this entire catastrophe. The revelation hit them like a physical blow. The enemy was not an impersonal force of nature, but an ancient, powerful sorcerer with a deep-seated vendetta against Eldoria. A wave of despair threatened to engulf them. Malachor, the embodiment of primordial darkness, a foe thought vanquished forever. The sheer scale of his plan, the centuries of patient manipulation, was almost too much to comprehend. Yet, amidst the encroaching shadows, a small, fragile glimmer of hope emerged. Lyra, having overheard their desperate conversation, stepped forward, her quiet presence radiating a gentle strength. "Malachor's magic is tied to the void, yes," she said, her voice soft but clear, "but also to corruption. And where there is corruption, there is an imbalance. An imbalance that can be rectified." She reached into a pouch at her belt, drawing out a small, beautifully intricate pendant, glowing with a soft, inner luminescence. It was an ancient talisman of Ethel, a relic passed down through generations of healers, said to possess the power to purify and restore. "This talisman," she explained, holding it aloft, its light pushing back against the encroaching gloom, "is attuned to the purest ethereal energies. It can't stop Malachor directly, but if we can amplify its power, if we can channel it into the very source of his beacon, it might disrupt his ritual. It might sever his connection to whatever he is drawing forth." Her eyes, though still weary, held a defiant